Master and Man by Leo Tolstoy. Chapter 1. It was back in the 70s on the day after the winter feast of St. Nicholas. There was a holiday in the parish, and Vasily Andreich Brekhanov, the village innkeeper, a merchant of the Second Guild, could not get away. He had to be in church, since he was the church elder, and at home he had to receive and entertain family and friends. But at last the final guests left, and Vasily Andreich began getting ready to drive out at once to a neighboring landowner, to buy the grove he had been haggling over for a long time. He was in a hurry to get there before the merchants from town could snatch this profitable purchase away from him. The young landowner was asking 10,000 for the grove, for one reason only. Vasily Andreich was offering 7, and 7,000 was barely a third of what it was worth. Vasily Andreich might have bargained the price down even further, since the forest lay in his own district, and he and the village dealers had a long-standing arrangement. No merchant bid up prices on another man's ground. But he had learned that the timber merchants from the provincial capital were planning to bid for the Goryachkin Grove, and he decided to go at once and settle the matter with the landowner. So as soon as the holiday wound down, he took his own 700 rubles out of the chest, added 2,300 of the church's money he was keeping, so that it came to 3,000, counted the notes over carefully, put them in his wallet, and made ready to go. Nikita was the only one of Vasily Andreich's workers who was not drunk that day, and he ran to harness the horse. He was not drunk that day because he was a drunkard. Since the eve of the fast, when he had drunk away his cloth coat and his leather boots, he had sworn off drinking, and he had kept away from it for 2 months now. He was keeping away from it still, despite the temptation of the drink that flowed everywhere during the first 2 days of the holiday. Nikita was a peasant of about 50 from a nearby village. No manager of his own affairs, as people said of him. He had spent most of his life working in other men's households, not at home. He was valued everywhere for his hard work, his skill and strength, and above all for his kind, easy nature. But he never stayed anywhere long, because a couple of times a year, sometimes more, he went on a drinking bout, and then, besides drinking away everything he owned, he turned wild and quarrelsome. Vasily Andreich had thrown him out several times too, but always took him back, prizing his honesty, his gentleness with animals, and above all his cheapness. Vasily Andreich did not pay Nikita the 80 rubles a man like that was worth, but around 40, handed out without any reckoning, and mostly not even in cash, but in overpriced goods from his own shop. Nikita's wife Marfa, once a handsome, spirited woman, ran the household with a half-grown son and 2 daughters, and she never invited Nikita to live at home. For one thing, she had been living for some 20 years with a cooper, a peasant from another village who lodged in their house. For another, though she ordered her husband about as she pleased when he was sober, she feared him like fire when he was drunk. Once, having gotten drunk at home, Nikita, probably to pay his wife back for all his sober meekness, broke open her chest, took out her most treasured clothes, grabbed an axe, and chopped every one of her dresses and saraphans to shreds on the chopping block. All the wages Nikita earned went to his wife, and he never objected. So now, 2 days before the holiday, Marfa had come to Vasily Andreich and collected white flour, tea, sugar, and a quart of vodka, 3 rubles worth in all, plus 5 rubles in cash, and she thanked him for it as for a special favor, though at the lowest count Vasily Andreich owed Nikita 20. "Did you and I ever draw up any contract?" Vasily Andreich would say to Nikita. "If you need something, take it, and you'll work it off. With me, it's not like with other people. Wait for payday, then accounts, then fines. We deal on honor. You serve me, and I won't let you down." And saying this, Vasily Andreich was sincerely convinced that he was Nikita's benefactor. He could make it sound so persuasive, and all the people who depended on his money, starting with Nikita, backed him up so well in this conviction that he truly believed he was not cheating them, but doing them good. "I understand, Vasily Andreich. I serve you. I do my best, like for my own father. I understand very well," Nikita would answer, understanding very well that Vasily Andreich was cheating him, but feeling at the same time that there was no point even trying to settle accounts with him. As long as there was nowhere else to go, you lived where you were, and took what you were given. Now, ordered to harness up, Nikita went to the shed as he did everything, cheerfully and willingly, with the brisk, light step of his pigeon-toed legs. He took the heavy tasseled leather bridle down from its nail, and jingling the rings of the bit, went to the closed stable where the horse he was to harness stood alone. "What, got lonely, did you, little fool?" said Nikita, answering the faint whinny of welcome that greeted him. The horse was a well-built bay stallion of middling height, his hindquarters a little low, standing alone in his stall. "Easy now, easy. There's time. Water first," he said to the horse, exactly the way you speak to someone who understands your words. He flicked the dust off the stallion's sleek, grooved back with the skirt of his coat, put the bridle on the handsome young head, freed the ears and forelock, dropped the halter, and led him out to drink. Picking his way out over the deep dung of the stall, Mukhorty kicked up his heels, playing at aiming a hind leg at Nikita, who was trotting beside him to the well. Go on, you rascal," said Nikita, who knew exactly how carefully Mukhorty flung out that hind leg, just enough to brush his greasy sheepskin coat, never to strike, and who loved that trick of his more than anything. After a drink of the icy water, the horse sighed, working his strong, wet lips, clear drops falling from the whiskers into the trough, and stood still, as if lost in thought. Then all at once he gave a loud snort. "Don't want any more. You don't have to. We'll know for next time. Just don't come asking later," said Nikita, quite seriously and thoroughly explaining his reasoning to Mukhorty. And he ran back to the shed, tugging at the rein of the lively young horse, who was bucking and clattering across the whole yard. None of the other workers were around, only a stranger, the cook's husband, in for the holiday. "Go and ask, there's a good soul," Nikita said to him, "which sledge they want harnessed, the wide one or the little one." The cook's husband went off to the house, which stood tall on its stone base under an iron roof, and soon came back with word that the little one was wanted. By then Nikita had put on the collar, strapped on the studded saddle pad, and was coming up to the two sledges under the shed roof, the light-painted shaft bow in one hand, the horse led by the other. "The little one it is," he said, and backed the clever horse into the shafts, while it kept up its game of pretending to bite him, and with the help of the cook's husband began to harness. When everything was almost done, and only the reins were left, Nikita sent the man to the shed for straw, and to the barn for a length of coarse cloth. "There we go. Easy, easy now. Don't fluff it up," said Nikita, packing down the fresh threshed oat straw the man had brought into the sledge. "Now let's lay the sacking like this, and the cloth on top. Like this, and it'll be good sitting," he said, doing exactly as he spoke, tucking the cloth in over the straw all around the seat. "Thank you kindly, dear soul," said Nikita to the cook's husband. "Two together and it all goes quicker." And gathering up the leather reins joined by a ring at the end, Nikita settled himself on the driver's seat and started the eager horse across the frozen manure of the yard toward the gate. "Uncle Nikita! Uncle, hey uncle!" a thin little voice cried behind him, and a 7-year-old boy in a small black sheepskin coat, new white felt boots, and a warm cap came hurrying out into the yard. "Take me up," he begged, buttoning his coat as he ran. "Well, come on then, run little dove," said Nikita. He stopped, took up the master's pale, thin little boy, now shining with joy, and drove out into the street. It was past 2 o'clock. It was freezing, 10 below or so, gray and windy. Half the sky was covered by a low dark cloud. In the yard the air was still, but out in the street the wind was sharper. Snow was blowing off the roof of a neighboring shed, and at the corner by the bathhouse it spun in whirls. Nikita had barely driven out through the gate and turned the horse toward the porch, when Vasily Andreevich came out of the house, a cigarette in his mouth, in a cloth-covered sheepskin coat belted tight and low with a sash, onto the high porch, where the trampled snow squeaked under his leather-soled felt boots, and stopped. He pulled a last drag from his cigarette, dropped it, stepped on it, and letting the smoke out through his mustache and squinting at the horse coming up, began tucking in the corners of his coat collar, on both sides of his ruddy face, clean-shaven, except for the mustache, fur side in, so his breath would not wet the fur. "Well, look at that, the little rogue, up there already," he said when he saw his son in the sledge. Vasily Andreevich was warmed up by the vodka he had drunk with his guests, and so was even more pleased than usual with everything that belonged to him and everything he did. The sight of his son, whom he always privately called his heir, gave him great satisfaction just now. He looked at him, squinting and baring his long teeth. Behind him in the doorway, seeing him off, stood Vasily Andreevich's wife, pregnant, pale and thin, her head and shoulders wrapped in a wool shawl so that only her eyes showed. "Really, you should take Nikita with you," she said, stepping timidly out from the door. Vasily Andreevich said nothing. Her words clearly annoyed him. He scowled and spat. "You're traveling with money," his wife went on in the same pleading voice, "and the weather might turn. It really might, God knows." "What, don't I know the road, that I need a guide along?" said Vasily Andreich with that unnatural tightening of the lips he used with buyers and sellers, biting off each syllable with special care. "Really, you should take him. I'm asking you in God's name," his wife repeated, wrapping her shawl over to the other side. "She sticks like a wet leaf in the bathhouse. Where am I supposed to take him?" "I'm all ready to go, Vasily Andreich," said Nikita cheerfully. "Only someone must feed the horses while I'm gone," he added, turning to the mistress. "I'll see to it, Nikita dear. I'll tell Semyon," said the mistress. "So, are we going then?" Vasily Andreich said Nikita, waiting. "Well, it seems the old woman must have her way, but if you're coming, go and put on something warmer, that grand town coat of yours," said Vasily Andreich, smiling again and winking at Nikita's sheepskin jacket, torn under the arms and down the back, frayed to a fringe at the hem, greasy, matted, and a veteran of everything. "Hey, dear soul, come out and hold the horse," Nikita shouted into the yard to the cook's husband. I'll do it myself," piped the boy, pulling his small red frozen hands out of his pockets and grabbing hold of the cold leather reins. "Just don't spend all day beautifying that town coat of yours. Look lively," Vasily Andreich called, grinning down at Nikita. "In one breath, Father Vasily Andreich," said Nikita, and with his toes turned in, trotting quick in his old felt boots with their patched felt soles, he ran across the yard and into the worker's hut. "Aranushka, get my coat down off the stove. I'm going with the master," said Nikita, running into the hut and snatching his sash off its nail. The workwoman, who had slept after dinner and was now setting up the samovar for her husband, greeted Nikita cheerfully, caught his hurry, and got moving as fast as he did, threadbare cloth caftan drying on the stove, and began hastily shaking it out and softening it up. "There now, you'll have room for a proper holiday with your man," Nikita said to the cook, out of the good-natured courtesy that made him say something to anyone he found himself alone with. Then he wound his narrow matted sash around himself, sucked in his already lean belly, and cinched himself over the sheepskin as tight as he could. "There we are," he said afterward, addressing not the cook now but the sash, as he tucked its ends in at the waist. "Now you won't jump loose." Then, raising and dropping his shoulders to get slack in the arms, he put the kaftan on over everything, arched his back again to keep his arms free, patted it down under the armpits, and took his mittens from the shelf. "Now we're all right. Stepanish, you ought to change what's on your feet," said the cook. "Those boots are done for." Nikita stopped as if remembering something. "I ought to, but it'll do as it is. It's not far," and he ran out into the yard. "Won't you be cold, Nikita dear?" said the mistress when he came up to the sledge. "Cold? What cold?" "It's warm as anything," answered Nikita, arranging the straw at the front of the sledge so it would cover his feet, and stowing the whip, which no good horse would need, underneath it. Vasily Andreich was already in the sledge, his back and its 2 fur coats filling nearly the whole curved rear. And taking the reins at once, he started the horse. Nikita hopped on in front on the left as they moved off, and left one leg hanging over the side.